I've covered wars, you know! Why, hello there. I hope you're ready for an outing in the mall. Today, we are going over Dead Rising 3. Dead Rising 3 is technically the fourth entry in the Dead Rising series, with Dead Rising 2 having Case West as a spin-off, and then you have Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, which is an alternate Dead Rising 2 with Frank. Dead Rising 3 would follow Off the Record as the next-gen experience of Dead Rising. Now, when this game initially came out, there was a lot of outcry for this game. This game was viewed as the casual dumbing down of the franchise. Now, I played Case West after I finished Dead Rising 3 before I went on to Dead Rising 4. And I gotta say, you can see a few of those signs in Case West. And because of how Case West is made, it made sense in that to have the survivals not really have so much the escort missionistness, because you were evading the HQ of the people behind what's going on. So you didn't really have a base of operations. It was just a very short in and out kind of job. You won't like being there for like a week or something like the other games. Now, I gotta say, Dead Rising 3 definitely has had its opinion changed from when it launched. Mainly because of Dead Rising 4. A lot of people called 3 an abomination to the franchise, but when you look back at it, especially after playing 4, you definitely can say, while it is vastly easier, it at least still had a chunk of the heart still. Dead Rising 4, a totally different topic, obviously, but that was a game franchise killer. Anyway, Dead Rising 3, we start as Nick, a mechanic who has, like many of the protagonists, been the unfortunate victim to be in the zombie apocalypse. After the events of Dead Rising 2, basically, they made these, like, patch chip things for people who got bitten to inject Zombrax into them, so theoretically the zombie problem was solved, but for some reason all of a sudden a zombie apocalypse happens in Nick's town, and well, hell breaks loose once again. Nick, with a few people he knows, has to run around town and try to survive and figure out a way out of the town. While the news and that will report on whether they're trying to save people and what's going on, it becomes very clear the government has very little interest in saving anyone and has more interest in finding something. Dead Rising 3 boosted the size of what you had. Now you have a city, and you have like little structural islands, kind of like a miniature GTA 3, these basically 4 little islands of the city with bridges connecting them. And with having a more bigger open area comes needing more quicker travel. Well, Dead Rising 2 introduced vehicles as a bigger play, where they were only available in the parking lot outside in the park area in the underground garage in Dead Rising 1. They became a little bit more bigger travel in a few areas of Dead Rising 2, but still limited to certain zones that they were in. There's a lot more freedom with vehicles in Dead Rising 3 and a bigger focus on them. Also, involving the crafting system where you combine items, you can now affect vehicles on top of many of the equipment and many returning weapons from the Dead Rising 2 games on top of many new wacky freaking shenanigans on top of that. Dead Rising 3 adds a shit ton of collectible things on top of just blueprints. You got Frank West's statues, tragic points, and things, and these are all just basically things to give you points and collectibles. not really that big of a thing. Blueprints obviously are pulling for weapons, especially if you get the battery hammer thing. Oh man, that thing is, whoo, that thing will level you up quick. I probably got 80% of my fucking levels the second I got that thing. That thing will get you a lot of fucking levels. Now they changed up the UI some. You still have the health square system, your EXP, but now you no longer have the kind of inventory system that you had in the other Dead Risings. Now you can carry up to 8 items by holding the shoulder button. You can summon forth the wheel to show all your items and quickly use the analog stick to select what you want in your hand. This has the advantage of being able to pull out a weapon quicker, but organizing your stuff for what comes in your hand after another can be a little bit more confusing if you're used to organizing your equipment into a certain line in the older Dead Rising. So it can both be a blessing and sometimes be a bit confusing on what the fuck you're going to get in your hand next after it breaks. Books work much differently in Dead Rising 3. While they still were torn, books now can be equipped whenever you want and no longer take an inventory slot. This lessens the challenge, which is a recurring theme in Dead Rising 3's design. And even later on, you can learn a skill that just lets you fucking equip everything. Well, I understand the desire to make the game more accessible. One of the charming things about Dead Rising was the challenge of having to work with a time limit and tough challenges and choices and limited time to get things in it. You didn't have infinite time. And while there's still a time system in Dead Rising 3, it is so forgiving. I didn't miss a single fucking radio called thing. Everything, I had tons of time, and I ended up with tons of time to go and grind some levels until something else came up or I found something else. And survivals are vastly easier to deal with in this one. While there are a few that make a few tougher requests where you might have to find something you're not sure where to get unless you happen to have remembered or seen it before prior to them requesting it. Many survivals you just save and they went off. So half the survivals off of what there is in the game just outright take care of themselves after you save them, with the other half sometimes requesting certain things and then still usually taking care of themselves. There are a few that you do a few little escorts for, but for the most part they mostly take care of themselves. And if you were frustrated with older games in the regard of how the survivors were, you'll probably like the survivors in 3 more. But those who enjoyed the challenge of saving these people and shit will probably find the overall killers and survivors a downgrade. Something new they did with the survivors, however, is that there are several survivors that you can take to any of the safe houses that you claim in the cities, and we call them back and have them join you in your escapades in town. Now, I always found the game vastly easy, so I didn't take advantage of this. But I could only imagine how much easier having a posse of survivors with you could only possibly make the game. On top of that, since you can get multiple safe houses, one of the things that are really nice is you have a clothing locker where you can go up and get to all your clothing, but you also have one for all your combo weapons, and this really breaks the game in my opinion. While it has like an energy meter bar thing, where different classes of weapons consume more, like the more complicated combo weapons will consume more of that energy sources. This, aside from that, you can keep coming here and get all the weapons and equipment you want that you already had. All you had to have done is picked it up. Craft it, it's there. Pick it up, it's there. So if a survivor requests something that you've already got in your locker, you can head to your locker and get it that way too instead of hunting down the item. So you're pretty much encouraged to just fucking grab everything. That way, you get it in your locker, and you can always just get it and not have to worry about trying to relocate shit. So grab shit, throw shit, use shit, get it all added in. You'll making combo weapons and getting requests done faster. Because of this, really, you don't have to make combo weapons very often, because, well, you can just get them out of your locker, unless you happen to be in the middle of something where you can't, and you happen to have the stuff. There are all things that can make making combo weapons faster and easier in your skill tree. The Dead Rising 3 is the first one to really change up the skill tree while on that note. In the past Dead Risings, you would have something randomly level up. Dead Rising 3 throws this out the window and categorizes everything and lets you choose what you want. You get skill points, and each different tiers of different sections cost different ones. Like the first two in life are 1, the third one's 2, the third and fourth are 3, and the last 2 are 4 points each. So the early levels of each category are just 1, but over time they'll get higher on that. And you will need to actually level up beyond 50. While you stay at 50, you can keep getting levels to get the last few skill points you need if you want to completely max Nick out on everything. And while on that note, Nick has a lot of OP shit. Regenerative abilities, being able to make so much shit last so long on top of all the books. I mean, fuck those battery hammers. I could kill hundreds of fucking zombies with one of those before it breaks. And of course, with the evolution of a new gen Dead Rising, was of course more increased gunplay. While gunplay in the original Dead Rising is notably pretty awful, each entry has slightly improved it, and Dead Rising 3, of course, improved it a lot more. So if you liked using guns, or you like using guns, you will find them a lot more useful, especially ones with good ammo count in them. However, still melee is the better way to go in most instances, where guns tend to be more useful on human players and bosses. Did I say players? I mean, like, you know, humans, living people. Versus the undead. Melee way better on the undead in most cases. And you still have a lot of silly gadgets and shit that you can do funny stuff with if that was your cup of tea in the previous Dead Risings. But there does appear to be a lot more of a serious tone to the aesthetic of the game while having a very cringe humor personally. I didn't really particularly like many of the characters in Dead Rising 3 personally. They just came off really blah. I don't know. They didn't have a lot of pizzazz to them, and a lot of psychos were pretty really fucking weird. I mean, I know Dead Rising has some really weird whack jobs, but I mean, Dead Rising 3 had some really fucking weird psychopaths. While the game is vastly easier than basically any Dead Rising game up to this point, When we get to Dead Rising 4, you will see it at least retains a lot more Dead Rising than 4 will. The game does actually have co-op too. It's not local, it's online only, so you'll have to play online, be it PC or Xbox Live, if you wish to experience the co-op mode. But it does retain a co-op mode where someone will play the other mechanic dude who's in the beginning during the storyline. Like a lot of stuff I review and talk about, I usually like to try and talk about the physical build without any patches and stuff, and we have done that here. This is the original Dead Rising 3 version, not the Apocalypse Edition, though from what I understand, the Apocalypse Edition is the exact same disc, and all the DLC is a code, from what I understand, but I'm not 100% sure. I think I heard someone claim it might have a patch or something on it too. I'm not sure. I've heard a little debate on that when I looked it up. I did get the good ending. I played on normal though. There is a nightmare mode. In nightmare mode, I've always heard a lot of criticism for. While it's supposed to be harder, like, you know, how I was saying, there's so much time in normal mode. Well, the nightmare mode is supposed to be a lot more grinching on your time. And the problem I've always heard from hardcore Dead Rising people in regards to nightmare mode is it is too far in the other direction. Well, it claims a certain amount of time. People have actually done the math and found that that time is inaccurate. It's actually going faster when it's supposed to. So it is harder, but it might be a little too unfairly hard maybe. But I didn't go through it personally. I did get to level 50. I did save all the posse survivals that you can summon into your group and take on missions except for one. I was missing one, and when I looked it up, it was a character that actually kills themselves. You could actually stop them from doing it, which I wasn't aware of. Now, I did not use the Kinect with this. I didn't own one at the time, though ironically I got one a little later. And this also uses the smart glass, and there's a DLC that uses the smart glass. The Kinect can be used to like have like audio cue sounds, like you can yell to gather attention from zombies or distract psychopaths. And the smart glass was supposed to be for like some special thing. I'm not 100% sure. Like, of course, a lot of the new modern old games have. There are common problems with pop-ins. Some of the models are messed up sometimes when popping in scenes and things. There are some kind of weird physics at times. Like when I jump attacked with Nick, there were times where I got stuck in the air and just floated there for a second until it actually finished the animation. Cars exploding and shit have a lot of weird physics. There were times where the item I was holding would vanish. It wouldn't like disappear like from my inventory, but it would vanish in my hand and I wouldn't be able to use it. And I wasn't sure what caused this, but I think it happened after things would grab me. But opening your inventory and then trying to, you know, change your weapon would fix that. And this being the first Xbox One game I've actually went through, if you're an achievement hunter and you don't like online or DOM and shit, I got bad news for you. This is probably not new news for most people, but the Xbox One apparently does not give you achievements offline, but it does keep track of them. So when you go online, it will sync them and then unlock them. So it keeps track of them, but it won't do it offline officially until you go online. So that's kind of weird and stupid, honestly, but it is just something to note. Overall, I didn't have anything that hindered my experience other than what the most common things in the AAA market for the most part. Some personal things that annoyed me a lot in the game, though, was the map. The map is very annoying because when you're on certain missions and you're away from the mission, it would like to focus on one thing and then you need to drag it all the way back where you are over and over again if you're a big map checker person like I am. which, well, I am, so. Overall, while a vastly easier experience, I would at least say Dead Rising 3 is still a Dead Rising game, vastly compared to what we would get after this game. It became the black sheep of the family, originally hated, but everyone welcomed it with open arms after 4 came out, saying, "We're so sorry. We really didn't know what the fuck we were saying." I had fun with Dead Rising 3. It's definitely not my favorite. As I said, the characters I don't like, and there are actually some story issues for the hardcore. I'm sure some people only know what I'm talking about. It's pretty common knowledge, but we're talking about spoilers. But it's not the worst thing in the world, and it's it's way better than fucking Dead Rising 4's Part 2. That's even worse. And way worse. Now, what would I say Dead Rising 3 is worth? It's only on the Xbox One. It can be played on a series, backwards compatible, and it is on Steam. There is no DRM-free version option, and there's never been a port to any other consoles outside the Xbox One. So Dead Rising 3 has the same problem Dead Rising 1 had for a long time. It was trapped on the console it came out for a very long time. And maybe one day Dead Rising 3 will leave the confines of Xbox and have a more proper build somewhere else for that. But as it is, if you want a physical copy, it's the only place you can get one currently still. Now, the Apocalypse Edition, I want to know, is a enhanced version that comes with all the DLC in that. But it's a code. It's not in the disc. And as far as I can tell, you can't actually buy OG version of Dead Rising 3 digitally anymore. Everything's been upgraded to the Apocalypse Edition. Now, I did not play through the DLCs. As far as I understand, the DLCs are from the perspectives of some of the psychopaths. And one of them, you play as a character who appears in Dead Rising 4. I've heard these are all pretty meaningless and pointless. Apparently, interesting footnote, these were actually originally ideated to be the other protagonists of Dead Rising, but because of lack of time, they basically cut that and just made it about some of the psychopaths, from what I understood. Always take that kind of stuff as a grain of salt, because especially over the years, sometimes those kind of stories, more information comes out and it becomes really wishy-washy what's true. You get things like Miyamoto went out into the forest and that's how he came up with Zelda, and then one day it's like, oh yeah, that's just a tall tale. You know, it makes the whole thing sound really cool in the marketing department. You know, like, we get incidents of that, or the thing with, like, Silent Hill 4. Silent Hill 4 was originally not designed to be a Silent Hill, and then another person will say, Silent Hill 4 was designed to be a Silent Hill game. And then it's like two people on the same team conflicting information. So, you know, taking that with a grain of salt is something I read before, that supposedly they were going to star the other protagonists, and then that was dropped, that for time reasons. But overall, I have not really heard interesting things about the DLC, so I didn't personally go out to pursue them myself. Probably one of the more annoying things with Dead Rising 3, though, is the constant fight over your menus. So you have several different menus, your map, your character stats that you can level up, and things about your combos and things. As you progress through the game, you'll get pop-up notifications like you found a flank statue, or you leveled up, or you got a new mission thing of that, you know. And each of these will change when your menu like what tab your menu opens. So if you want to, like, stay on the map, well, it's not. You're going to be flipping through pages over and over and over again, because the game never lets out on this at all. It will constantly keep going, changing the tab, and it gets so annoying. On top of the fact of the map zooming in and out around, like, the objective you're at, and if you're, like, on the complete other map, and you want to, like, zoom in where you are, you're going to be doing that a lot too. It is very very mean to us people who like looking at the map constantly, because we're directionally challenged. You will hate the menu. So, what would I say Dead Rising 3's worth? Well, if you're getting it digitally, the Apocalypse Edition, as I said, is the only version you can get digitally. It's $29.99 full price nowadays, which is a pretty decent price. Of course, buying a brand new version of the physical version is not really easy because, well, it's kind of, sold out. Now, that's not to say there aren't people with sealed copies selling them on eBay and stuff. There certainly are. And most people obviously want the Apocalypse Edition so they can get that sweet, sweet DLC. But honestly, I don't think it's worth it. But if you want to get this game, I think it's worth an okay $19.99. It's a really easy Dead Rising game, but you can still have a lot of fun. I didn't have a problem with the game. I enjoyed it. It was easy, but I had fun with it. I think $20 is a fair price for the game. Luckily for you, though, you can get super fucking cheap secondhand really easy in almost any territory. It's pretty easy to find this game between like $5 to $15. Now, if you want the DLC, because remember, the Apocalypse Edition is a code with the base disc. So, if you want that version, there's a lot more trickiness to it, because while you can get, obviously, the game used still cheap, finding an unused code might prove a little harder and a little bit more expensive. So, it kind of depends if you want to go in that route. But yeah, I think $20 is a fair price if you wanted to give it like the brand new value kind of thing. But you can get this game very cheap, and it's probably no time in the future. It's probably not going to go up anytime soon. The Xbox physical library for the Xbox One is pretty worthless, to be honest. It'll be scary if there's a day that the prices start going up on them, because the Xbox One being a pretty heavy DRM console, like, I really question if we'll ever really reach that kind of point with some of the games on it, honestly. But those are my thoughts on Dead Rising 3. Let's get into spoilers a little bit and talk about some of the problems with the story. While not having the kind of problems Dead Rising 4 has, it certainly does have some. And one of the biggest is Nick. Nick being a guy, specifically. So, super big Dead Rising nerds probably already know what I'm going to say here. If you go back to Dead Rising 1 during the cutscene where Frank is going over the list of the children who are supposedly infected with the zombie virus and are ticking time bombs, there is a list and they're all numbered. And there is a part where you get to see names and numbers. Nick is on that sheet, and Nick is not listed as Nick. I can't remember the name, but it was a girl name. So it's like, well, someone fucked up there, so retcon that. And that's one of the bigger issues. It's, not the end of the world, but it's kind of like, how did you miss that detail there? Like, why did you pick one of the numbers out, like, shown there? Like, could you have gotten one that's obscured or not? Like, I don't know why they did that. Otherwise, like, it's pretty much a giant government conspiracy where the government is basically trying to find the one kid who has the antidote, while someone else in the government's also trying to make super zombie army military weapon shit again. And, well, you get into all this shit and you go and stop all this stupid shit. It's pretty par the course at this point with Dead Rising. Now, what's interesting, you do meet Chuck Green near the end and find out the love interest of Nick is actually Kate, the little girl in Dead Rising 2 that you've gazed zombax to so many times. Wow. Didn't see that coming, to be honest. Though I knew about when I played through it, but back in the day, like, that was kind of like, oh, interesting. What's interesting about Chuck showing up is apparently Chuck never was able to totally clear his name over the events of Dead Rising 2. They grew up to be in kind of a bit of a gang criminal wing kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting because I played Case West after this, which was about him trying to find evidence to prove his innocence with Frank. So it's kind of interesting seeing that all the effort in that kind of led to him just being a kind of an underground person of that. So while it doesn't go into the nitty gritty of what happened specifically, it's clear that Chuck hasn't had exactly the greenest life ever since. But in the events of Dead Rising 3, he talks about wanting to clean up his life and helps you in taking down the rogue military man trying to take over everything. After such, Nick, if you get the good ending and everything, Nick being the person who has the cure inside him because he's immune to the zombie apocalypse, they get the cure out of him and they kill everyone. The zombie apocalypse is over. Like, they've cured him. Now, of course, that brings up the question of how the fuck Dead Rising 4 happens. Oh, boy. Won't that be a video? Anyway, those are my thoughts on Dead Rising 3. I know it's a pretty old game that probably not too many people are too concerned about these days, but there it is. Until next time, we're going to be rotting our flesh off in Dead Rising 4. Oh, that's going to be terrible. But we still have Case West to talk about too, so maybe we'll just delay it.